Hey everybody, welcome to the first rewrite video for Resident Evil Village. Okay, granted, we will probably change up some mechanics and stuff and all that, and I will try to get into nitty-gritty details for everything, but we're just going to have a real fun time trying to rewrite this game. So, okay, let's get down to it, and yeah. We're going to take a heavy inspiration from some of the concept art and RE7 because that was the base of this game and the crux of what I wanted. So yeah, let's get down to it and yeah, spin the tape and let's see what we get. Okay, first we're going to change the opening. We are changing the opening. Now, I don't want to go this into a rant video, but the opening it gets dragged along a lot, and we really don't get a time to shine and see what exactly makes this game different compared to RE7. And I really think the too much RE4 elements really drag this game down from being its own thing and all that, so we're going to keep those, but we're going to introduce them later. Because I want this game to feel more like a survival horror compared to an action horror, because, it makes the most sense. Now, the first thing we are going to change is the opening, and we're also going to go off of multiple endings, because there will be multiple endings from this game, just like there was 2 endings for the first game. And depending on when you boot this game up, you can play through one ending you got or another. So you can choose. I don't want this to turn into like an Infamous game, but I kind of want there to be that level of intrigue there, depending on what you choose. Now, for the first opening, it's the one where Mia is alive, but we're going to slightly tweak some things, and obviously we're going to pull heavily from the concept art. One, instead of being in a wheelchair, Mia will have a back brace. She will be similar to like Scarecrow in Arkham Knight. She will have a bad leg that she can't really walk as well. We'll basically crock it up to maybe she was kind of almost paralyzed from the Baker incident, and also is still halfway recovering, and the pregnancy probably did not help. The opening with Rosemary would probably be somewhat the same, but we're going to probably change up some things. The first and obvious one is going to be the fact that the opening will slightly be tweaked to where it is not a drag to sit through. The opening will, no matter what ending you go off of, Chris will always show up and gun down whether it's Mia or another person that Ethan found and fell in love with, and no matter what, the daughter you have with will always be Rose. So depending on the opening, the person might change, but if it's Mia, it'll be more apparent that things are a little bit off, a little bit different. You won't have like a flashback of like her saying to Ethan, you matter, all that stuff. No, that's going to be replaced with a scene with Mia actually being somewhere first. Like you see her in like a cell, and then you would also see having like a flashback, and then you would see her talking with somebody. A similar aesthetic scene to what you got with her and talking with Ethan, but this time it would be with Chris Redfield. Now we're going to slightly tweak things on their conversation. Basically, her basically saying, you know, I'm fine, stuff like that. You would get more of an explanation for what's happened between, like, she's been, like, being tested, so has Ethan, but Ethan's a lot more different, a lot more capable compared to what he was, while her body is a lot more, it's been breaking down cellularly, and she's almost dying. And stuff like that. Now, in the second opening, you basically have a similar scene to what you got with Mia from the first game, but this person, this lover that Ethan had, is like, she's a lot more caring, and she's like, you matter. Why do you have to, this stuff like that? We have this child, and after what happened with you, it kind of is similar in aspect to what we got in the original game. No matter what ending you go off of, some things will be the same, but some things will be tweaked. But so I won't be going off the two endings or the two different, styles of things that the opening wise. We'll just stick to the one where Mia's alive and blah, 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 blah. So, it'll be a similar opening that what we got, the whole tale with the village thing, but this time Ethan's a lot more kind of like a lot more compassionate, a lot more caring. Like he's a lot more the way he was in the game, but pushed. Like he's a lot more emotional. I think this time around he will be more emotional than what we got from 7, and that's what makes the most sense, because that's the one thing that a lot of people liked with 8 is he's a lot more emotional, a lot more, what's it called, he still plays on the serious aspect. I don't think he should make as many wisecracks. Like, he's not Leon. We're taking out the RE4 elements a little bit. We're actually making him a lot more serious. I think that works for his character. I think the difference is what we're going to do is make him have more of a heart. I think the best person that we can base Leon off of, except for like the extreme nature of it, is Nero from DMC. We're basically going to make him a lot more, how should I say this? He's going to have more of a heart. He's going to be a lot more, more serious, but he's going to be like the type of person that's like live or die for his family. He's not going to let what happened ever happen again. I think that's the most important thing, and we're going to keep that. I think this time around with this rewrite, we're also going to make Chris less of an asshole. Okay, I don't mind him being an antagonistic force, but the way he just kind of just keeps pushing Ethan aside and say, stay out of our way, but he never really flat out says, what's going on. We're kind of going to keep a bit of that, but we're going to kind of, I think in the second encounter, the one that is at the reservoir, I think that's where you'll basically have him be like, there's more going on, and you don't need to be involved. I tried to save you from Miranda. She was partially, basically influenced everything. And the Baker estate, everything. But she took over, and then it would be cut off by Monroe, basically. And that's where you would kind of get the hint of, maybe Chris is not really as bad as you would think. He's actually, this would give us more of a justification for the fight near the end with him, and kind of be like, you killed my wife. I think it would be more apparent in the second try, if you basically, for Mia not being there, it would be more apparent, where Ethan would have more of a reaction and a lot more of a hatred for Chris, where he would be like, I already lost one wife, you shot the other, you bastard. Then you took my wife. I think that's where you would have the second case scenario, where he's basically, Mia's already been dead, he lost everything, now he makes a life for himself, and Chris has moved him around, and then he got married and, had a child with somebody. that's where this would be more apparent of like that emotional tie of like, you son of a bitch. I think that's where I think the second case scenario for like the reservoir, Ethan would punch Chris. I think that's where there would be a fight between him and that's would be like the whole thing of like, you killed my wife in front of me. I think that would be like, then it would kind of get more of a hint of like, that wasn't her. Didn't you ever know? And then that's when freaking Monroe would pop through and stuff like that. So it gives the game more replay value because there'd be two different scenarios and dialogue would be different and stuff like that. But back to the one where Mia's alive. Pretty much the first half of the game, we're streamlining it. We're making it a lot more smooth, a lot more better, and still going to have the atmosphere being in Romania and stuff like that, which I don't have a problem with, but we're tweaking a lot. So, first thing is, you don't just enter a first house and then, like, have to crawl around. No. The first house you enter is basically similar to what we got in the RE4 remake. It's a lot bigger. It's not just dark, you plunge your way through snow. Like, Ethan, when I think the second case scenario would be the one where he's just like, they happen to drive through freaking Miranda's neighborhood. The first one, Miranda goes after Ethan and Rose. Like, she basically attacks a caravan and forces, like, basically Ethan to basically find and track down, and that's where you would end a second, basically, the second case scenario is Ethan will be being transported away. Miranda has the Lycans attack this caravan that basically has him and Rose in it. Basically, they tear apart the entirety of the forces there. Ethan's forced to watch his daughter be taken away for a second time. And when he tries to steal one of the working cars to go after them, then his car is attacked, and then you wake up nearby the Miranda's village, and it makes a lot more sense this time around. This would be the case scenario for the one where Mia is alive, for the record. Because I personally thought it was always be dumb if we always leave it open to, like, Chris would happenly make Ethan go near, like, basically the caravan go by Miranda's, like, thing. No. I think the first case scenario, maybe there is a slight miscalculation where that happens, but I don't like the idea of it. The second case scenario makes more sense for this to happen, but the first one is basically he would be transported. You would have like a cutscene after he's knocked out by the goons and stuff like that. Lycans attack the caravan where, like, Ethan, you would actually have him handcuffed, and like over like the radio you would hear Chris like, make sure he's safe. We can't let her get a hold of him or the baby. She's up to something. And then you would have, like, you would hear like noises, and then basically the caravan would be attacked. Then it would half cut to black. You would basically see Miranda take Rose. And then you would play as Ethan for a split second, going to another caravan, pulling out one of the guards, and going after Miranda. Then that you would have another cutscene where that car is attacked by Lycans, and he would happily be in a crash that would be nearby one of the basically the Romanian section of where the village is, which makes a lot more sense in retrospect, where basically they're happily going away from that area
And Miranda does not like that, so she sends them to attack the caravan, and then go take Rose, and then Ethan basically goes after her and goes towards where she really wants him. It makes more sense, and honestly, plays on that aspect. The second change would be the opening villain section. I will say the crawl to the village will not be as we'll still keep the atmosphere of shadow and snow and darkness, fine. But once you beat the game, this section is not going to be a slow walk anymore. You will be able to run through the snow. I'm sorry, it's the one stupid part of the game is that you can't do anything when you play, you just go real slow. We're fixing that, and we're going to slightly tweak this section. The first house will be less dark. I think it will be a lot more open. It will feel like more like a manor, but like an abandoned one. And later it might be revealed that this was the original house that Miranda lived in on the outskirts of the village when she was human. Some of the stuff will slightly be the same. Lycans will attack and stuff like that. The old man section where he shoots at you, that'll be at this house compared to the original one. Funny enough, we're going to slightly tweak the old man's role. He will actually be Miranda's original husband or her father, maybe, I don't know. Because there would be little books and dialogue, little things that you would see compared to what you originally get. So yeah. The second thing, when you get to the village, it will actually be bigger this time around. There would be more Lycan-based enemies. The village, I think, works best as the hub, and I think the first thing I will change is that each section of this place, the village, will have the village will be focused around Lycans, the villagers that have been transformed, the castle, that will be the main goal. But this time around, the village will not be feeling as dead as it was originally. I think you will actually find more survivors. I think they will die, obviously. I think there'll be things you could basically have it to where Ethan will find another house after this whole incident where he gets his hand bit and stuff like that, because that's still going to happen. There would be, before the whole thing with the grandfather and his daughter, maybe there is another few villagers that he would, one of them that we find, and they would be they would obviously die, but I think they would kind of be they would be a lot more kind of like how the cop was in Resident Evil 7. I think they would be more questionatory towards Ethan. They would be a lot more skeptical. Of course, they would pay for it with their life, but I think they would be the ones to give Ethan the knife. I think that would be the first thing. And the second thing is you don't get an inventory till later, before getting to the the grandfather. You would find a dead body with a backpack. That's when you would get the inventory, or at least a partial inventory. I think you would have 2 spaces for your jacket pockets, but you really wouldn't have a real inventory until you get this backpack. You would have a space for a gun, a knife, and a healing salve. That's it. And this plays on more of the survival horror. You would have 4 spaces, 4 up top. That's it. And the reason why is we're axing the briefcase till later in the game. Here, the problem with the briefcase is you really can't do a whole lot. You just get it, and you have everything. You have all the room you need. That's a problem. It worked best for RE4 because of like Leon's status and stuff like that. For this game, we're regressing a little bit to RE7 for the beginning portions, and then later we'll slowly descend and make freaking Ethan more like Leon, just a smidge, gameplay wise, but not completely. Which we will focus on that, and maybe in a part 2, expanding on the gameplay and stuff like that. You find the dead body, you get the backpack, and then you open up your more storage. Of course, there'd be a bit of dialogue explaining, well, always need room for, stuff, blah, 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 whatever. I can't really think of anything at the moment. And then you would have the whole thing of, like, explaining with the hag. I think the hag would be more of a subtle character compared to her just being there and then making it apparent that, like, she is Miranda in disguise. I think maybe that she would play more of a role of being like Mystique. Like Miranda would basically take the form of other people. So maybe one of the other villagers that Ethan would find would be like a scarred woman that would basically be, very scared, and then she would basically would point basically Ethan to this, thing over there or whatever. The opening section would be more it would be a lot more slow, built up, learning more about the village before you get to the whole raid part. I think that slow burn works best because when you get to the part where the Lycans attack and you nearly get killed, that sets the stage of like, you are fucked if you're not careful. I think making the village also bigger, a lot more expansive, less dead, works best because it gives there more reason to be afraid, because maybe you have people that were actually affected that are still alive compared to what you had with the Baker state. So that's what sets this game apart. And I think, it would also play on this whole line that I really liked in RE8, where Ethan was like, why the is this happening again? Why is everyone dying on me? I think that's something that would work best. And it's more apparent in the second playthrough where he's a lot more like, no, 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 not again, not again, not again. I think, the one where Mia's already dead, that's why he would be even more emotional and a little bit more, he would be even more kind of like, very driven to make sure this never happens again. Some stuff will obviously stay the same. So like the some of the gameplay, we'll talk about that in a part 2. Most practically be the same. The whole fight with the Lycans and immediately like dying will be the same. It's just more the slow descent to where you need to go. Okay. Some stuff will practically be the same. The whole thing with the hag saying, "Oh, death has came for them all." I think the second case scenario, I think Ethan would actually have more of a reaction, and he would grab her, and there'd be a cutscene where he's like, "People are dying, and you want to laugh."
And it would play out where maybe it gives more of a hint that maybe this is Miranda, because the hag's reaction would be very smug in her dialogue, but also kind of telling Ethan to F off in her own way and don't touch her. I think that kind of would play on something later in the game with the way Ethan reacts to Mother Miranda and stuff like that. The Duke's role will practically be the same. We could probably tweak some stuff. We're also going to tweak something else. You don't get money from killing enemies until you meet the Duke. I think when the Lycans die, they die. You don't get anything from them when they drop. They don't drop anything. They start dropping stuff after you meet the Duke, because I think the Duke would basically would point out and say, he would point out to one of the bodies and would say, check the pockets. Sometimes they still, even though they've turned into that, they still have something. And Ethan, of course, would check the pockets, and after pulling the money out, then then it would disappear. So that would introduce the system of the whole money system and stuff like that in a more pleasing way compared to the way we got things. And speaking of the introduction of things like from the castle or stuff like that, the Four Lords introduction will be slightly the same with both case scenarios, but the chase and some of the dialogue, some things will be tweaked for both case scenarios, but the chase will always be different. Basically, I want it to feel more intense for either playthrough. I think it's you're still going to be running away and making sure you don't die and stuff like that, but actually going to make it more intense and actually feel like there's stakes there. Because I kind of felt like it was very underwhelming and very just like, oh no, the ceiling's coming down. Oh no, there's lichens here. Like, it's not very scary. I think running away from the baby in the Del Viento house is more scarier. And I think I want there to be some type of, like, feeling like that. I think the opening part where he's like, it's showtime, and he hits the camera down, the first case scenario, Ethan doesn't hesitate. He books it. And I think Heisenberg would still be counting, but he laughs at first. You would hear him laugh when Ethan looks back for a second to look and jumps in the hole and keeps running. I think him just looking back being stupid, where he's like, one, two, three, four, five, and like Ethan's like not even in the hole. No, I think there'd be probably both case scenarios. Ethan books it. Like, we're changing that crap really quick. We're basically saying, we're setting the stakes that these guys are a lot more dangerous than the Bakers. And also, we're going to make sure that they have their own form of horror and a lot more, scarier in nature and stuff like that. Now, Ethan, of course, will, unlock different weapons. It'll, like, he'll have, like, the shotgun. Yes, you will be able to get more backpacks and also side pouches. Those will be returning from RE2 because I think that could work, expanding the slight bit of storage slightly. So you'll have a mixture of getting two different forms of storage. So you're not, like, constantly worrying about things. And the fact that the game will be longer and the map will be a little bit bigger might help things. So that axes two problems. The chase sequence will kind of be the same. The ending will be obviously the same. The whole thing with the spinning thing. The difference is the cubbyhole will go further back. Because I think it being really close made no sense. So yeah, we're basically making that go a little bit further back. the part where you enter the castle will be overhauled. We're going to massively expand it, make it bigger, more grandiose, more like we're keeping the way it looks. We're just making it bigger because my problems with the castle are the same that I've said on stream. It's very boring, very condensed, very it's just there's nothing to it. And we're also the fact that they clickbaited us with they marketed the giant MILF pretty much the entire thing and we didn't really get anything else just was a spit in the face. So we're actually going to go with more of an interesting thing. So you don't get Lady D and the daughters grabbing you till like later on. I think you would have time to look around the castle when you get in. I think the opening part would be bigger. As you will be seeing on screen, here is my rough art for the opening part of the castle. It's a lot more bigger, there's a lot more rooms, and it gives you time to really look around first and actually get a feel for things. Now, what I did for my version of the map is I kept some parts, but I've expanded, put more rooms. That big purple line is also a third floor in the main room. There will be more puzzles, but also there's more room and it's a lot more bigger. So you don't just immediately get grabbed by the daughters. So you basically have time to look around and figure out, like, well, basically try to unlock stuff. And there's like, it feels more like the Baker House this time around, this main area does. And we're gonna slightly tweak some stuff and make it a lot more condensed, a lot more bigger, and stuff like that. So certain doors, like what we originally had, basically require certain keys, but also you have some doors that require a certain type of way to get in, to where you basically have to get like a certain type of item. So like there's some doors that are basically have like a certain type of seal that basically needs a lot of heat to melt it just a little bit so you can open the door. So like you basically have to find this type of item and then which basically it works its way back to that area with the whole thing of the what's it called? We're gonna axe that whole thing first. What we're gonna do is we're gonna slightly tweak it. Basically, Ethan finally gets in, and basically he goes over to that area, and it's covered in dust. He can't basically whatever it is writing is, he can't dust it off like he does in the game. What happens is it gives you a time where he says, well, you know what? I gotta go find Rose. Maybe I can find something to open this way somewhere around here. And basically gives you more of a chance to go look around. At that point, you basically get to play around and look around and find stuff, and the final item is used to get that crud off that sign, and then you can read it. Then you get grabbed by the daughters, but they don't just grab and take you into a nearby room. No, they drag you up the steps to and around and up to the third floor. Then you would be in a room that you get hanged in and stuff like that. That scene gets pretty much, it's pretty much the same. The only slight thing is that basically the daughters, have been watching you play around. They were just curious what you were up to and what, and then they finally, once you basically, get to that thing, they say that to Lady D and she snaps at them. You let them come around my castle unscathed. Haven't I taught you better? And, well, let's see what, blah, blah, blah. Keep some of the dialogue, maybe add some new bits, because this is a rewrite, and pretty much all the same stuff like that. After you get hanged, I think it's pretty much the same. You'll have to look around for more puzzle items. The other parts of the castle and the dungeon are massively expanded. But this time around with the castle, after this bit, the daughters are split up to certain parts of the castle. We are axing the idea that Lady D would just happily let her daughters be anywhere. I think this time around, we're just going to condense them to be mini stalkerish enemies, and all that. Plus, it gives you more time to learn about Lady D and the castle and stuff, and pretty much worry about your main objective, which is Rose. Of course, you run back into the Duke, all that stuff. The dungeon area enemies are kind of the same. I think I would add 1 or 2 new enemy types down there. Basically similar to the like an advanced version of like torturous enemies. Maybe use like some cut content like from some of the other RE games or whatever. But yeah, pretty much would be the same. Lady D, you get to where she is. Only thing I would change is she doesn't just leave the room and come back. I think you would go out the door and make your way to the hallway, and you would see her coming, and you would run back to the room. Then you couldn't think of anywhere to go, so by the time you realize it, then she's already there, and then because she already knows you're there. Or we could just axe that all entirely and basically say she got pissed, left the room, but she saw you in the mirror, so she basically waited till you're about to leave and basically makes fun of you and then says what she says and then slams you down to the thing, which is pretty much, it works. Little difference is that I think after she slams you down there, she will basically make her way down there. Well, this is the end of part 1. Sorry, my fan's running. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and see you next time for the part 2 of the rewrite of Resident Evil Village.